Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me this morning. Now, as always, there's 3 things that you guys can do to help me out. That's liking, subscribing, and most importantly, sharing this video. Now, this video is dedicated to a new subscriber as well as a new donation contributor. Her last name is Prince. And the only reason I'm not saying your first name is because I'm going to absolutely butcher it. Thank you again for your generosity. Now, in this video, we are going to be discussing one of the most pervasive illusions of this reality that we live in, and it builds off of the concept that we talked about in the video concerning death or the lack thereof. Now, when it comes to free will, it has been ingrained in us from birth almost that it is our one tool that allows us to operate as human beings, something that distinguishes us as a species as well as gives meaning to our consciousness, and that is free will. Now, most religions, most philosophies, most everything when it comes to human thought and belief is in one way or another tied to the concept of free will. And I sit here and I'm going to contend that free will itself is the most pervasive illusion within this reality that we exist. And I have many reasons to come to this conclusion, and that is what I'm going to lay out for you today. Now, in our last video, we discussed the possibility of there being simultaneous timelines existing simultaneously side by side. And when you die in one of those timelines, instead of your consciousness actually experiencing your death, your consciousness is bumped to a different timeline where you continue living out a scenario in which you survived that experience. However, in your original timeline, all the consciousnesses that exist there did experience your death, and they continue in their timeline. Now, the reason this is very important is because you can apply the same concept to the choices that you make on a day-to-day basis. Now, free will is 100% dependent on the illusion that we have a choice in everything that we say, everything that we do, every action that I am physically taking while recording this video is a choice. And therefore, according to philosophy of free will, I am exercising free will at all times. And this is what makes me unique as a human being. I will contend that that's an illusion, and not only that, but there is no way for us to ever realize that it is an illusion with tangible evidence, okay? And that is because we are going to apply the same exact concept that we do when it comes to experiencing death. Now, like I said, every choice, every decision that I make on a day-to-day basis is the illusion of free will. But how is it not free will? Well, this is where things get very interesting. Now, instead of a choice, imagine that it was my experience of a death. I would jump to an alternate timeline, correct? What if that applies to every single choice that I make? Now, that would mean that the simulation, or the computer, that we are in right now, that is processing this experience, that is processing this reality, has literally processed every single choice that I am going to make or have the opportunity to make, and every outcome of every decision simultaneously. Now, this sets up an infinite amount of timelines. now. I'm not saying that the computer actually invests the time in simulating all of this at once, but as each decision that I make from birth is made, the computer can then calculate what decisions I'm going to have to make from that point forward, and so on and so forth. Now, as soon as I make a decision that rules out an alternate timeline, the computer or simulation can stop that simulation and spawn a new one based on the decisions that I have made. Now, what does that mean? That means that every single outcome for every decision that I could possibly make has already been predetermined. Now, this got my brain rattling because there has to be a way for the simulation to cut corners as far as processing goes. Because when you program something, you always try to make it the most efficient that it could possibly be. Now, if the reality that I'm existing in is full of people like myself that have the illusion of free will, that means that not only does the simulation have to calculate what I am doing and the decisions that I am making, it has to calculate all 8 billion people in the world simultaneously, and not only that, it has to calculate the interactions of all of those people and how they interact with me as well as how they interact with each other. Now, just the sheer amount of processing power that would be required to accomplish such a task is unfathomable. Which leads me to the simple conclusion that the majority of meat bags that you see out there don't even have the illusion of free will in their minds. Rather, they are simply fulfilling a predetermined role. Now, that means there is no consciousness, there is no choice, there is only the illusion of a consciousness being projected to those of us that exist inside of this reality that actually have the illusion of free will. Now, the reason that this has to be the case is if the simulation develops these NPCs and inserts them into the reality that we exist, it means that the calculations and processing that this simulation has to do drops significantly. And not only that, it allows the information to be absorbed and transferred almost instantaneously, whereas if there were no NPCs, you wouldn't be able to observe the information firsthand or the choices that the conscious is making, right? Think of an NPC as a node in a computer or as a neuron that receives information and transmits it back to its source, right? If those NPCs weren't there, you would have to devise another way of observing the choices and actions that were being made. And the NPCs, in my opinion, allow that to happen. And not only that, it explains why there is certain people where you will never be able to break the cognitive dissonance that you see. For example, if you are to tell somebody, my father's a great example, wicked open to conspiracy theories, but everything that he ever presented me, right, hinged on the reality of the mainstream heliocentric narrative being true, right? UFOs, space, etc., 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 etc. And you could talk to him about the most crazy of topics, everybody being a reptilian, and he would buy into it because it fits that narrative. But as soon as you implore something and start talking to him about something that doesn't involve that model being true, that reality being true, instantly shuts down. You're never going to get them to even give you an inch. And that is because, A, they aren't programmed to be able to receive that information or recognize that it is true. B, in order for the outcome that they were programmed to achieve to be achieved, they cannot acknowledge this as a possibility. Even though the program may recognize it as reality, they've designed this model for a reason. So what this means is, no matter how hard you try to speak the truth, you're speaking to a brick wall, okay? And even when you're interacting with another consciousness, right? Let's say you're not a meatbag NPC that I'm talking to right now, and you can actually think freely and absorb what I'm telling you and develop a new thought, because the illusion of any thought being new is insane. No idea under the sun is new. Every piece of information I'm talking to you about right now, I received from somebody else, which means it ultimately came from the program we're in, which is a very scary realization. That means everything we are doing, like I said, is not only pre-written, right? Not only do we have the illusion that it's self-derived, it's all here for a reason. Which leads me to believe that if you do have the ability to comprehend what I'm talking about, to comprehend these thoughts and develop your own from it, you are here to discover something. And until you do, you're going to keep being pushed in the direction of that discovery. Because like I said, free will does not exist. And if NPCs are part of this, right, are part of this reality, they are going to try to either steer you away from your objective because that's what this simulation is designed to do, or they are put here to steer you towards your direction that you're supposed to be. And the former is most definitely where the truth of the matter lies. Because the more and more you resist this programming, the more and more your resonance rises. And the more and more the program puts obstacles in your way. Have you ever noticed that when you wake up to something, it's almost as though everything around you all of a sudden turns to shit? And that's because you are going against the flow. You are changing the chain of probability. And you are altering things to a point where the system does not like what you have done. Now, the system has already programmed that outcome to be possible because, like I said, free will may be an illusion. However, they have to give you the ability to get to your destination. So think of it like a labyrinth from the time you are born, where every choice you make is ultimately taking you one step closer to the objective that you need to achieve, or the programming of this simulation that has been designed to deter you from that succeeds and takes you 2 steps back. They tell you a little bit of truth in everything. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. That's how this system operates. And if you can manage to change things and reverse it to take 2 steps forward and 1 back, you're constantly moving forward towards your objective. This may seem as though I've been all over the place. However, I have a feeling that this video is going to resonate with a bunch of people. Prince, this is dedicated to you. Once again, thank you for your donation. I am going to start a playlist of anybody that makes a donation. You're going to be able to choose a topic. Now, Prince didn't give me a topic. However, I feel as though that she's going to relate to this, and it's dedicated to that donation. So it's going to get put in a new playlist, and anybody that gives me a donation and I make a video for, it will be added to this playlist, and you will be dedicated as the source and inspiration for it. Once again, God bless. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon.